Welcome to I Drive SoCal, the podcast all about mobility from the automotive capital of the United States, Southern California. Tom Smith here, and joining me is the good professor, Mr. Clinton Kwan. Professor, it's been a long time. We've gotten through COVID. Thanks to COVID, we've found a new way to do our thing. We used to do a lot of podcasts. We're just audioed, but we do them together in the same room. But now we're doing it from different sides of Southern California. And thanks. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too, Tom. Yeah, it's been quite a few years, so it's great that we're getting back together to do another podcast.
The band back together. So today's topic we're going to cover is the Audi vehicle lineup. So Audi as a brand is the luxury version of Volkswagen. Volkswagen being one of the largest car makers in the world, has a lot of vehicles, brands under its umbrella, right? You got Audi, you got Volkswagen, you got Porsche, you got Lamborghini. I think Rimac is underneath there too, or was the electric car, the electric hypercar.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I know it's getting a little nuanced.
Yeah. So there's a number of European brands that aren't sold,
right?
here.
That we don't even know in the United States.
Yeah.
But so we're going to focus on Audi. And we're going to break it down into, what do we say? This SUVs, sedans, and coupes.
Correct.
And then sprinkle in the electric where it makes sense, because that's one thing that Audi's doing right now is they're the leading luxury manufacturer when it comes to rolling out electric vehicles, right?
I would say so. Yeah.
I'd say Mercedes is pretty close behind.
Mercedes, yeah, and BMW has a couple of models too.
But it really seems like Audi's leaning into it pretty firmly.
Yes.
So starting with Professor, the SUVs, we have the subcompact Q3 all the way up to the Q8 in number, although the Q7 is a little bit bigger than the Q8, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the Q3, the subcompact Q3, take it away.
Yeah, so the Q3 is what I would call their entry level or subcompact SUV. It is their least expensive and the smallest SUV in their lineup as well. It's a direct competitor to the BMW X1, to the Mercedes-Benz GLA, the Jaguar F-Pace, and the Volvo XC40. And this is, I believe, their second generation. So it's a huge, here in the US, so it's a huge improvement over the previous generation that debuted here in the United States. So it'll seat four people fairly comfortably. It doesn't,
you can pack 5 adults in, but
yeah,
somebody's going to be eating their knees.
Yeah, and there's not a whole lot of cargo space in the back. So it's more what I would call an urban commuter vehicle, a vehicle where it would be very easy to park, maybe like in downtown LA, or like
easy to park, easy to whip in and out of traffic.
Correct. If you don't need a whole lot of space, and you just need a vehicle to get around town.
And it's offered in all-wheel drive quattro.
Yeah.
And a 4-cylinder.
Yep.
And then the starting price on that is starting MSRP is $38,700 for the Audi Q3. And then bumping up size-wise, I know you want to jump to the Q5, but before we get to the Q5, let's talk the Audi Q4 e-tron, which starts at $48,800.
So that is one of the newest Audi vehicles. It is a fully electric vehicle, and it is a compact SUV. It's basically a smaller version of the e-tron, and they've come out with a new naming convention because they will have a full lineup of electric vehicles. Right. So they've called that one the Q4. The e-tron, they're the bigger electric vehicle. That was the original name. That will be renamed to the Q8 e-tron.
And now, interestingly, the Q4 e-tron is available in rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive.
Yes.
And then the starting MSRP on that, on the Q4 e-tron, is $48,800.
Yeah.
And then bumping up from there, we have the
destination.
Q5.
You're talking about 50,000 essentially.
What? Well, yeah, I'm going with what's on their website.
Yes,
right?
correct.
So yeah. So the Q5 is, I believe you mentioned before, their bread and butter, starting at 43,500. But this is offered so many different ways. This is one of those vehicles that I think you can add 30-40+% to the price.
Oh,
pretty easily if you want to go really reach for the top trim and options.
Yes, correct. This is their bread and butter vehicle. This is the vehicle you're probably going to see the most on if you're driving around Southern California. It is a beautiful looking SUV, gorgeous lines. I love the curves on it, especially the belt line on it. It is a direct competitor to BMW's X3, the Volvo XC60, the Acura RDX, the Mercedes-Benz GLC. So this is definitely the hottest selling segment right now, whether it's non-luxury or luxury compact SUVs.
It's a good utility. You can easily get 4 adults, 5, pack the kids in there in the back seat if you need to. Not quite at a 3-row, but it comes in a hybrid, comes in a 4-cylinder, and all-wheel drive, which Audi's Quattro is standard. But then you also have a Sportback.
Yep, that's what they're known for, the Quattro system, and now you see it in so many luxury brands as well. They offer all-wheel drives on so many other vehicles as well. And then you mentioned the Sportback. They have, and they call it a Sportback because the back is more slanted, making it look more like a hatchback. So that
you lose headroom in the back as well, though, and a little bit of cargo space.
Not only do you lose cargo space, but yes, you do lose some headroom in the back. So if
but it looks cool.
It does, but it does look cool. So it's more for design and aesthetic purposes. So this would be a direct competitor to the Mercedes-Benz BMW X4.
So that's the Q5, and the Q5 very base model starts at $43,500. Now, bumping up from the Q5, we go to the Q7, which is actually the longest of the Audi SUVs. And the Q7 is, I think the EPA rating has it as a midsize. The professor calls it a little bit bigger. It is a 3-row SUV, so it gives you quite a bit more versatility with that extra row. But with the starting price of $58,200, professor, take it away on the Q7.
Yeah, I personally would classify it as a large SUV. It's around 199, 200 inches in length, in that right around there. So it's a direct competitor to the Lincoln Aviator, the current Acura MDX, the Infiniti QX60, and even the Lexus RX long, the L version. But I guess with the newer edition, they won't have an L version. So yeah, it's a 3-row SUV, and it's got plenty of space. As you mentioned, Tom, it's a 3-row SUV.
And it comes in a 4-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, a hybrid, but all of them have the all-wheel drive Quattro.
Yeah.
And there's an S version.
Yes, there is an SQ7. So it is a higher performance version. So as with many of Audi's vehicles, there's the A, there's the S, and then with some of their special, with some of their models, they'll have a special RS trim. Or
and that one had. I'm sorry.
I said I shouldn't say trim because trim is different than model. So RS are the highest performance models.
And then that one has a starting MSRP of $58,200, if I didn't say that previously. But you're probably going to be looking at closer to what, 80 or so by the time you get the S.
Yeah.
And all dialed up. But
yes, sure.
well worth it. It's a fantastic technology, safety, beautiful luxury vehicle. So then jumping up from the Q7, you actually have the shorter Q8 because it doesn't have that back seat, but it does have that sloping roof line in the back, and it looks gorgeous. And we've talked about this because it shares some platform with the Lamborghini on the upper end, and then also on the lower end, the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport, right?
Yeah, it looks like a Lamborghini Urus. Yeah, you could also compare it to the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport. It's got that really muscular, aggressive look to it. It's a great looking SUV, and I really love that.
I love it too. Catches my
especially
eye.
the RSQ8. It's just
yeah,
incredible. Yeah, every time I see one of those on the road, I'm like, wow, that's a great looking SUV.
Yeah, that's one of the vehicles that just it turns my head every time.
Yeah, me
and
too.
So it starts at 71,800. But geez, the RSQ8 starts at 122,800.
Yeah.
So,
but that's probably like half the price that you pay for a Lamborghini Urus.
right. But then you could also get a completely decked out Atlas Cross Sport for less than half of the starting price of the RSQ8. So
but then you wouldn't get the same engine. The RSQ8, you're getting what, like,
well, you wouldn't get the same a lot of stuff.
You would, but you're getting well over 500 horsepower, and I think that's plenty of horsepower in a car, in an SUV.
Yeah, no, of those three, if money's not an issue, I'd go with the RSQ8 over the Lambo for sure.
Yeah, I would take that. Yeah. And I'll get another.
It is surprising, though. We've talked about this. It is surprising in Southern California how many Lambo Uruses we see rolling around.
Crazy.
I mean, just
almost
like
every time
people are using them as everyday drivers.
Almost every time I go somewhere
at who the driver is, and I've caught a few like kind of little old lady looking people. Like, I like you got to be in your 70s. Going, what are you driving?
This is a vehicle that appeals to everyone. Apparently, it's just amazing how many of these I see on the road. I mean, just about every time I go somewhere, I see one of those on the road.
Okay, so now the e-tron.
Yeah, the e-tron is Audi's mid-size electric SUV, and it's actually their true mid-size SUV. It is another beautiful Audi design as well. I think it's without a doubt the best looking mid-size luxury SUV on the market. No question about it, not only in terms of exterior design, but in terms of interior design. And one thing Audis are known for are their interiors. And what I love about Audis is that with their electric vehicles, that they didn't stray away from their the interiors that they've designed.
Yeah, their core DNA of what their vehicles are. Whether it's gas or electric, doesn't matter.
Yeah, with some vehicle manufacturers, they've decided, well, we're going to do something completely different with the electric vehicles.
And then with the e-tron, it's bigger than the Q4 e-tron. The Q4 e-tron actually comes in rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. The e-tron is only an all-wheel drive. And then you also have, for the e-tron, a Sportback, an S Sportback, a GT, an S, and an RS GT.
Yeah, it's hard to remember all. There's so many.
I got them written down. I don't know if you can see. I got cheat sheet right off the side.
But I love the design. I love the design of the Sportback even more for the e-tron. That car is beautiful, and I got to drive that when it was first when it first debuted. In fact, they delivered it to my house, and I drove it down to Temecula.
You know, that's one of the things that you got to give to Audi, that, you know, they're a luxury car maker, European luxury car maker that's diving into the EV space, and they haven't made anything that is arguably spaceshipy looking.
Yeah.
Right. You can't say that about Tesla. You can't say that about the Mustang Mach-E.
Yeah.
Rivian, you know, they all have a little bit of a, even a pickup truck. The Rivian pickup truck has a bit of a spaceshipy look to it, but
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. So let's move on to the sedans. We got the A3 is where it starts with the subcompact all the way up to the full size A8. But Professor Kwan, take us for a ride in the A3.
Yeah. So the A3 is their entry level sedan. It is their subcompact sedan. It is a direct competitor to the BMW 2 Series, the Mercedes-Benz CLA, and the new Acura Integra as well. And this is the only vehicle that comes in either a front-wheel drive version or their all-wheel drive known as Quattro.
Right.
And it's all new for 2023.
And then they have the S. They also have an RS.
Yes.
And then the engines that it comes with are either a 4-cylinder or, interestingly, you don't hear this one a lot, a 5-cylinder.
Yeah, they actually had that in the TT RS as well, but they don't make that anymore.
So now the A4, compact, big seller, I believe you mentioned.
It is their top selling sedan, and even though we call it a compact, it's a big compact. It measures about 187 inches. So that used to be the size of a mid-size sedan.
Sure.
So it's actually a pretty spacious compact sedan, and I think in Europe they would actually call that a mid-size sedan. And this is their sports sedan. It's the direct competitor to BMW's 3 Series, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, the Lexus IS, the Volvo S60, the Cadillac CT4.
And offered all kinds of different ways, right? You have the S, you have the all-road wagon, 4-cylinder hybrid engine, and as you already mentioned, the Quattro. Yeah,
they have a less powerful 4-cylinder. I think it's only rated at 201 horsepower. Then you have the 261 horsepower 2.0 liter inline 4. Then you move up to the S4 and you're getting a 3.0 liter V6 turbocharged rated at 349 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. Okay, now the A5. The A5 is a little bit of an outlier because, well, it's interesting because it comes so many different ways, I guess, is part of the reason. I am a huge fan of the A5. So you have the A5 Coupe, and then you have the A5 Sportback, and there's also an A5 Cabriolet. So we'll talk about the A5 Sportback, which I think is one of the most beautiful looking vehicles on the road. I absolutely love the Sportback, especially when it comes in the S5 or the RS5. Yeah. I've seen that before, and just like the RS Q8, it's a head turner. It is. It really is. It stands out on the road, and it's like, whoa. Yeah. In that very top, top trim, the RS5 Sportback, the very top of the line model, you're getting a whopping 444 horsepower out of a 2.9 liter V6 with 442 pound-feet of torque. It's incredible. But I love the way the car looks. It's such a beautiful car. And next up is the A6, and that is a midsize. Yeah. And that is, I think, one of the best looking midsize sedans on the road. Oh, without a doubt. It is just beautiful. And you have two different wagon configurations for it. You have the all-road Quattro, and then you have the more rare RS6 Avant. Oh, yeah. And I've seen one of those actually at Costco, of all places. Oh, yeah. I think you did tell me about that. And I had to do a couple laps around that car. I was like, wow. Yeah. I was kind of hoping that whoever owned it would come walking up while I was checking it out, because I wanted to get some input, but no luck. I guess they were still shopping. Yeah, I was at one of the South OC Cars and Coffee, and you see all types of cars there, right? Like all these high-end supercars, and that car was getting so much attention. I mean, everyone was just looking at that car, and they're like, yeah. Wow, if you know cars, that's it. I mean, that is a rare. And it's a wagon. Yeah, this is a wagon. I mean, this is a vehicle that does it all, right? It's got the looks, it's got the performance, it's practical, right? Well, practical from a perspective. Well, practical in terms of it'll carry the space that you have inside, not practical from a perspective of what it's going to cost you. Yeah, I didn't mean that. I meant practical in terms of space. So it'll carry 4 people very comfortably. Yeah, and it's you can get the family in there. Space. So if I had a choice between driving an SUV and this hot rod wagon, I'll take one of these. Yeah. And this is a vehicle you will rarely see. And it comes in a 4-cylinder hybrid, 6-cylinder hybrid. So only a hybrid. That you're talking about the regular A6. Yeah, the RS6. Yeah. And then that's a twin turbo 8-cylinder. Yeah, that RS6 has a whopping 591 horsepower. They should have just tweaked it a little bit more and cranked it up to an even 600.
Let's call it 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The A7, it's a bigger midsize.
Yeah. Think of the A7 as a larger version of the A5.
Yeah.
It's a sportback. Yeah. But the A7 only comes as a 4-door sportback. So it slots right between the A6 and the A8. So not quite a full-size sedan, but a little bit bigger than an A.
Right. It's going to look really cool, but you're going to lose the headroom and a little bit less cargo space. And the headroom on that is pretty significant. I've gotten in and out of that at car shows, and it's kind of like, all right, it's gorgeous, but your backseat passengers, if they're tall and older, elderly, they're going to be giving you kind of sideways looks.
Yeah.
But it also has an S or an RS. We got a 6-cylinder hybrid
and the RS7 looks incredible too.
Twin turbo, 8-cylinder.
Same engine as that RS6 that we just talked about previously. So this would be a direct, the A7, S7, RS7 direct competitor to the Porsche Panamera.
And then the A8, we got full size, available in an S version.
Yeah.
Turbo 6-cylinder hybrid's the only power plant on it. But this is the vehicle that, I mean, you buy it, you can buy it to be driven in, right?
You could, yeah. Yeah, this is their full size. This is their flagship luxury sedan. I would call it the executive sedan.
Sure.
And yeah, direct competitor to the BMW 7 Series, the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the Lexus LS, and the Genesis G90.
And then the coupes. We got the TT, we got the A5, which you kind of touched on already, and then we got the R8, which is in a class of its own. TT's in the class of its own as well. You've actually owned a TT, right?
Yeah, I had the 2nd generation TT. I got one in 2008. I had it for 3 years. It was my weekend car. Put 45,000 miles on it. It was just an absolute blast to drive. And the amazing thing about that vehicle is the space in that vehicle. I was able to fit a 32-inch television with the box in the back without even having to put the rear seats down. It's a great
32-inch TV isn't that big these days. I mean,
but look at the size of the
vehicle
TT.
Isn't that big. Yeah, the
TT is pretty small.
It's a very small.
Can you tell me another car that's similar in size where you'd be able to stick that in the back?
No, I don't know. Frankly, I don't get in cars that small. That often.
Yeah, but it is a fun car. Yeah,
it's a little go-kart.
Yeah, I took it to the track a number of times. Yeah, it's been described as a mini R8.
And it has an S. It also has an RS, 4-cylinder.
Yes, there was an RS before, no longer an RS.
As of 24?
I think as
23?
I think as of last year.
I don't think there's
a 2023 model.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
It comes and goes.
Yes.
The A5. Now we talked about the A5 already. But
there's an A5 coupe.
Yeah.
Yes.
And cabriolet.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And RS.
Yes.
So the A5 is like that vehicle that comes probably more ways than any other vehicle that Audi offers, really.
Yeah. Which is so interesting because it was supposed to be more of a special vehicle, right? And then they came out with all these different versions of it. Sort of like BMW.
It'd be interesting to see the sales numbers on that.
Yeah.
All in and then also separated. But probably something that we never really get our hands on, at least to the drilled down data that I'd kind of be interested in knowing. But
yeah,
a cool vehicle nonetheless, really good looking and obviously very versatile for.
Yeah, the first generation that was designed by a well-known automotive designer, Walter De Silva. I think he called it what. I believe he called it one of the most beautiful cars he designed, if I remember correctly.
All right.
Yeah, I love that first generation, and the 2nd generation is beautiful as well. Love those gorgeous sculpted lines on that vehicle.
All right, now the R8.
Yeah, the R8, the supercar.
Supercar with a super price.
Yes.
I recently did a report on the Corvette Z06. And we were just walking around the Peterson the other day, you and I,
Yeah.
talking about, and we were in the hypercar exhibit and seeing some of the hypercars, which are over $1 million a piece, very, very few of them made, exquisite in every way. But some of the performance didn't reach like the 0 to 60 of the new Z06 coming out, which is just crazy. But do you know any of the stats, top speed or 0 to 60 for the R8 or Spider?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I do know
it's a great
that,
looking car. The Spider is, of course, a convertible, right?
it does come in rear wheel drive,
right?
562 horsepower. It's a 5.2 liter V10. And there is an all-wheel drive version which pumps out in the higher trim, pumps out a whopping 602 horsepower. So
yeah, there's two different 10-cylinder engines that are available.
Well, I think they're the same thing, but one just cranks out more horsepower because one's rear wheel drive and then one's all-wheel drive. So they probably decided with the all-wheel drive, you put a little bit more horsepower in that one.
All right. Yeah. So there you have it on the Audi vehicle lineup from iDrive SoCal, from me and the good professor Clinton Kwan. You know, I'd have to say, with just to wrap this up, you know, Audi, I think, has come a long way in the last, since the early 2000s.
I would say so. Yeah.
Especially since
the early 2000s, they've come a long way.
And they're putting out some beautiful product. And, you know, my suggestion would be to lease, just because they have so much tech that they're putting into those vehicles that you want to get the latest, greatest tech as it comes out. Number one. Number two, with all that tech, it's good to be under warranty. So you might as well lease, but that's my buying philosophy. I don't know, Professor, would you concur, or would you suggest a different path?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. If you're someone who wants a new car every few years, yeah, leasing's definitely the way to go. I think leasing is also the way to go if you want to keep your payments low. If you're gonna, I mean, especially with the high car prices nowadays, if you're gonna go finance a car, your payments are gonna be substantially higher than leasing a car. But also, even if you want to buy the car, you could. I tell people all the time, go ahead, lease the car. If you're planning on buying it, then after
it gives you the option to lock in the price at the end.
Yeah, because whether you lease a vehicle or you're purchasing a vehicle, you're going to be negotiating the price of the vehicle. So regardless of whether it's a lease or you're financing, the target price should be the same.
And then one other element to add in,
and then you don't have to worry about the mileage. Even if you go over mileage, it won't be an issue. They won't charge you.
Another element to factor in, though, is in the case of like an R8 or the Avant wagon that are so rare and so expensive, that's not going to be a daily driver. So maybe you're buying it to hold on to it, and then in which case, maybe you just buy it. But as you point out, you can always lease it and buy it as part of the lease. So, Professor, thank you as always for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. For iDrive SoCal, I am Tom Smith, and we will talk to you again very soon.
Bye.